If you were to find a lamp and rub it, a genie pops out and offers you to grant you a wish. One wish, any wish. The only rule is you can't wish for more wishes. What would your one wish be? Well, I went to the popular online discussion site, Reddit, for some answers. It was really quite interesting. Most of the answers that I saw were kind of as you'd expect. World peace, happiness for everyone, unlimited riches. Nice. Not my one wish. There were some surprises. There was one person whose one wish was this. Their wish was to rid the world of pennies. Well, I vote yes, but not my one wish. There's someone else, their one wish, they wanted an unending chocolate fountain. I hope they have high metabolism. Not my one wish. Or this one kind of struck me. There's a person whose one wish, they said, my one wish is this, to have opposable toes. So you can use your toes like your hands. I thought that would be kind of nice, but not my one wish. If a genie were to appear to me and say, you can have one wish, any wish, the only exception, you can't wish for more wishes. You know what I'd wish for? My one wish would be this. I would wish for more genies. Come on, that's a pretty good idea. There's always a loophole. Now what I want us to do is take that situation and switch out characters, and instead of a genie, let's put in God. Let's say God appears to you and says, what do you want? I'll grant you a wish, one wish, anything that you want. What would you ask for? Because that situation, that's basically what he did with Solomon. We're teaching through the Old Testament book of 1 Kings. And if you've been with us the past couple of weeks, you probably recognize 1 Kings chapter 1, 1 Kings chapter 2, some pretty obscure stuff in there. Not 1 Kings chapter 3. 1 Kings chapter 3, if you know anything about King Solomon, you probably know this. This is the most famous story in the entire book of 1 Kings. Let me give you a taste. It says this, 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 5, at Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream. And God said, ask for whatever you want me to give you. Well, before we delve into Solomon's answer, let's understand what it was that was going on as we enter into chapter 3 of 1 Kings. Let's back up one verse and we get this in verse 4. The king went to Gibeon to offer sacrifices, for that was the most important high place. That's actually significant context. What we see here is Solomon, he went to Gibeon to worship God. That's what he was doing. This was in a context of worship. Well, what do you think worship looked like for Solomon back in those days? Well, in this passage, we get a really clear glimpse of what worship looked like in the Old Testament. The passage continues and says this, Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. Solomon didn't worship God with a song. Solomon worshiped God with a sacrifice. Solomon gave something of value. See, according to the Old Testament, the best measure of our worship, it really isn't our playlist. It's our bank account. How's your worship doing? Well, next we get to verse 5. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God said, ask for whatever you want me to give you. Well, there it is. The genie in a lamp passage. Only it's not a genie. It's God. So Solomon, he could have asked for anything. He could have asked for power. I mean, Israel was a relatively small nation. He could have asked for wealth. In chapter 5, he's going to spend a small fortune building a temple for the Lord. Or I suppose he could have asked for an opposable toe. He had options. He didn't do that. Next verse, verse 6, Solomon answered, "You have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this great kindness to him and have given him a son to sit on his throne this very day." Solomon recognized he wasn't the king because of his great skill. Solomon recognized he wasn't the king because of his great ability. He realized he's not the king because he was so worthy of being king. He recognizes here he's the king for one reason, because of God's faithfulness to his dad, David. That's why. Next verse, verse 7. "Now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, but I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties." Now let's be clear here. Solomon was not a toddler. Okay, chapter 3, this isn't like the boy king. We'd look at it and say, Solomon, he was actually an adult man. And we also know that Solomon, well, he wasn't incompetent. Remember chapter 2, he just defeated his adversaries to establish his throne. So he says this, "I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties." What does that mean? Well, I'll tell you what I think it means. I think that's Solomon's way of using that infamous four-letter word. H-E-L-P. Help. Do you ask for help? You know, I struggle doing that. I'm glad you do. I struggle with that a little bit because there's something inside of me that pushes back against that. And I think it's because asking for help, it makes me feel incompetent, makes me feel inadequate, makes me feel small. There is one gender in particular that has a difficult time asking for help. Any guesses which one? No comment on that. We'll just leave that one right where it is. Well, the danger with that, with not being open, not asking for help, the danger is if we don't get help, little problems can turn into big problems. Bad habits can turn into addictions. Unresolved conflicts can end up in broken relationships. Procrastination can turn into stress and health issues. Critical spirits can evolve into no one really wanting to be your friend. So here's the truth about me. I need help. And here's the truth about you. You need help. So when we leave today, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and say to somebody you know, you could even say this to somebody you don't know, go ahead and say to them, "Buddy, you need help." Because it's true. Well, there is another word that we use to describe a person who recognizes, I need help. Here's the word. Humility. Here's another word. Teachability. Solomon, he had that. That's what this means when he said, I'm only a little child. I don't know how to carry out my duties. He has humility. He has teachability. Solomon had that. Do you? What problem are you facing today? A relational mess, a financial dilemma, a difficult decision. Maybe you're running out of hope. 1 Kings chapter 3, the path out begins with one 4-letter word. Help. Lord, I need you. Help. Well, if you were granted one wish, only one wish, what would you wish for? I think I know what this puppy would wish for. More belly rubs. Who can say no to that? Well, 1 Kings chapter 3, God asked Solomon, ask for whatever you want me to give you. What does Solomon ask for? Not a belly rub. He asked for this. Verse 8 and 9. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So, give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people. Solomon asked for a discerning heart. And most commonly, we say that, well, Solomon, that he asked for wisdom. And that's true, but there's a little bit more nuance to it than that. The Hebrew word that we think of with wisdom here, the Hebrew word that Solomon used to make this request of God, it's this word. It's pronounced somia. And some versions of the Bible translate this a discerning heart. Other versions of the Bible use the word an understanding mind. Some call it a receptive spirit. The Hebrew phrase literally means this. It literally means a heart with ears. A heart with ears. A heart that listens. I think that's insightful. What God is doing here in this chapter is He is defining for us what wisdom is. You say, well, how about you? Do you have a heart with ears? Let's start with this. Who do you listen to? Who influences your life? Just because somebody is loud, they're a celebrity, or they've got a podcast, or they got a huge social media following, that doesn't mean they're wise. Most of the wisest people I know aren't loud. A heart with ears. Who are you listening to? We have this tendency to surround ourselves with people who will validate us, who will say what we want to hear. Do I look fat in these jeans? No, Do you like my new haircut? Well, yes, of course I do. Well, here's what I think. Am I wrong? No. You couldn't possibly be wrong. We like to surround ourselves with people who will affirm our values and our choices, who will just rubber stamp our decisions. And there's danger in that. That's not a heart with ears. Don't just listen to the loudest voices. Seek out and surround yourself with wise counsel. Solomon, he asked God for a discerning heart. He asked God for a heart with ears. Are you open to feedback? Are you teachable? Are you listening? Does your heart, does your spirit have ears? Well, that's not all that Solomon asked for. That's kind of the more famous part of it, but he actually continues. Let's keep reading. Verse 9. Give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. To distinguish between right and wrong. According to a study that I read this week, the average person makes around 70 conscious, significant decisions every day. And these decisions, they do determine the life that we live, and they do determine who we become. And these decisions, they're important, and they just keep on coming. What decision are you facing today? Maybe it's where to go to college. Maybe it's to date or not to date. Maybe it's to change jobs or to stay where you are. Maybe it's, what activities should we get involved with? Maybe it's breakfast. Should I make a healthy smoothie, or should I just eat that cookie, which technically has oats? So, that could kind of count. decisions, right? We all have these decisions, and I think everybody, all of us are like, well, I want to make right decisions. I want to make good choices. Everybody says yes when it comes to wisdom. We hear wisdom like, yeah, I'm in. Sign me up. How can I get some of that? Warning. This is where our Bible teaching may start feeling offensive because it is at odds with our culture. Verse 9. Give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. To distinguish between right and wrong. Well, who knows that? Who gets to define that? Where does that come from? See, throughout most of human history, spiritual leaders and philosophers and historians have all recognized that there is a truth that exists, out there. And the goal, it was to find that truth, to align life to it, and to experience peace by living in harmony with it. Recently, there has been a movement in our Western culture that vilifies a truth outside of me as oppressive. Rather, we elevate individual desire and self-expression as the highest truth. So, well, listen to me and get in touch with me because I know what is good and bad, what is right and what is wrong. That is in the Bible. But do you know who teaches that? Satan. This should scare us just a little bit. See, in Genesis chapter 2, God created, and when He created, it was good. And He invited Adam and Eve. He said, I want you to enjoy this. I want you to savor this creation that I have made. He says, just one rule. Only one. You can enjoy all the other stuff. One thing, don't eat from that one tree. Do you know which tree? Genesis 2, verses 16 through 17, it's very specific. The Lord God commanded the man, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Name of that tree is not arbitrary. Name of that tree, the knowledge of good and evil. God says, that's not for you. That's for me. That's my territory. Well, Satan, he encouraged the opposite. Genesis 3, verse 5, he said, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. What happened? Well, we know this story. Adam and Eve, they said, well, I want to be like God. I want to be able to define what is right and wrong. I want to be the one to define what is good and evil. So they went there. They ate it. Christianity has been teaching for thousands of years. This isn't new. This has been around for a long time. Christianity has been teaching that the fundamental problem in this world, that the fundamental problem in our life is this propensity to be the one to define what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is evil. We want that job. We would like to do that. But the Bible is really clear. That, defining right and wrong, defining good and evil, that is the exclusive domain of God. Anybody want wisdom? Yeah. Where does wisdom come from? Well, Solomon, the same guy who asked God for wisdom, he later tells us how we can get it. Proverbs 9, verse 10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Well, fear of the Lord. What does that mean? It means respect. It means honor. It means take God seriously. You know, the most common Hebrew word that is used for wisdom, it literally means this: to come under authority. You could substitute in the Old Testament the word wisdom with to come under authority. To recognize I am not the source of truth. To recognize I am not the one who defines what is right and what is wrong. And a lot of people resist that selectively. Me too. Let me get at this way. Would you believe that on the staff of the church, that I am not the person who has the most knowledge about technology? Do I hear any gasps? Anyone? Well, no, that's not surprising. Have you ever gone to your computer and seen a message like something like this? It says, big error. You really messed up this time. Your choices, I can click OK, I can click what else is new, or I can click, yeah, I know. I'm kind of in that camp. When it comes to office technology, I recognize I'm not the expert. And so I'll go to our tech team and I will do whatever they tell me to do. I'll do exactly what they tell me to do. I don't mind humbly submitting to their authority. See, I think we recognize in things like that, we can recognize there is a source outside of me that knows more than me. And that's not oppressive. That's helpful. That's freeing. You know, the gospel is this. The gospel is that there is a God. Someone created all of this. And that this God really does love us. And He doesn't just say that, He shows that. He came to this earth in the person of Jesus. And while He was here, He willingly gave up His life. He willingly sacrificed His life on that cross to take away our sin, to take away our shortcomings. And on the third day, He was resurrected from the dead. See, we aren't saved by our obedience, and we aren't saved by a good life. We are saved by Jesus. So if that's the way that it works, why do we have this book? It's a big book. There's a lot of stuff in here. If we're saved because of what Jesus did for us, why do we need all of this? Well, here's why. Because in the Bible, God has documented the wisdom of history. He has breathed into it and said, here you go. This is for you. You can walk with Solomon. And the same wisdom that I gave him can be discovered by you. You can read through the Proverbs, and these bite-sized nuggets of wisdom, they can be found by you. You can read about Jesus and witness wisdom here in the flesh. The Bible, this is the greatest source of wisdom in this world. It can give you wisdom beyond your years. It can spare you from heartbreak beyond imagination. Read it, open it, study it, get in a group with other people and talk about it, obey it, follow it. Wisdom, it is right in here for the taking. 1 Kings, chapter 3, the famous genie in a bottle passage. The famous make-a-wish passage, but it's even better. It's even better because it's not a fictional genie. It is the living God. Pretty sweet for Solomon. But what about me? Maybe I read this and think, well, you know, if God ever appears to me in a dream like this, now I know what to ask for. Good news. This 1 Kings chapter 3, it's not just for Solomon. God offers this to us. God offers the same thing he gave to Solomon. He offers it to us. We get this in James chapter 1, verse 5. It says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. See, God is not stingy with his wisdom. If we lack wisdom, it's not because wisdom is scarce. It's because our asking for it has been scarce. 1 Kings chapter 3, do I have a heart with ears? Do I recognize that there is a truth that exists outside of me? Am I willing to let God define what is right, what is wrong, what is good, and what is bad? Because wisdom starts there. Wisdom begins by being humble, by being teachable, by recognizing I am not the expert. I have preferences, yes. I have desires, yes. But I am not the source of truth. God is. So I willingly place myself under his authority. I will integrate his teachings into my daily life. Jesus doesn't expect us to have all the answers. All we need to be wise is to have a humble, teachable spirit that says, Jesus, I am not the source of truth. I need help. Would you lead me? Would you guide me? Would you give me your wisdom? See, Solomon, he needed that in order to lead the nation. What do you need that for? What do you need God's wisdom for today? What area of your life could you really use his guidance, his direction, his wisdom? Let's go to him.